Recently, I picked up a used Arcade1Up Space Invaders game. This is a first-generation Arcade1Up product and it comes with an unlit marquee. While the game looked great in my arcade with the room lights on, when the lights are turned off, the missing marquee was noticeable. Fortunately, the Arcade Game Factory offers a cost-effective LED marquee option for first-generation cabinets. I'd already installed one of their other marquees on my Asteroids Partycade, so I knew what to expect. I ordered the Space Invaders marquee and then set to work when it arrived. The kit comes with everything you need, including the new marquee with a plastic frame and pre-drilled holes. You also receive the necessary wiring, a strip of 12-volt LED lights, several screws, and a pigtail loop for the power connection. The new marquee is smaller than the original found on the cabinet, but this is necessary due to the frame needed for the lighted marquee. Once it was installed, I didn't even notice the difference. There are no instructions included in the kit. However, you can find them on thearcadegamefactory.com under Installation Instructions. You want to select the listing for How to Install the $40 Marquee. Be aware there's a link on the page called Light Harness Kit, as you'll need that information too. To install the marquee, you have to disassemble some of the cabinet. After removing the game from its riser base, I removed the back panel and unplugged the power supply from the back of the monitor. I then removed one marquee screw from the side of the cabinet I planned to lay on the floor. While the cabinet was still upright, I also removed the 4 monitor bracket screws from the opposite panel. I then laid the cabinet on its side and set to work removing the facing side screws. At this time, I also removed the control deck, as I would need to make modifications to it later. First generation Arcade1Up marquees are held in place with 2 side panel screws, as well as 2 screws on the back of the monitor board. Be sure to look for these. After removing the marquee, I discarded the alignment pegs, as they would not be reused on the new unit. The old marquee has a bottom board held in place with 3 screws. You'll need this piece for the new marquee. After removing the bottom board, I positioned it on the new marquee, only to realize the screws included with the kit were too short. I installed it on the new marquee with the original screws instead, which worked fine. Returning to the arcade cabinet, I placed the marquee in position, then secured it with the 2 monitor board screws. I then replaced the top board, making sure it fit securely in the slots in the marquee's frame. Before continuing on, I conducted a test of the LEDs by plugging them directly into the game's 12-volt power supply. Although the marquee looks washed out in the video, be assured that it doesn't to the naked eye. It's washed out due to the auto gain feature on my video camera. The LED light strips are mounted to a piece of plastic channel. They include 2 sections of double-sided tape for attaching them to the cabinet. I chose to mount the strip on top of the monitor board, which is bare MDF, so I wasn't sure if the tape would hold. I added 2 half-inch self-drilling screws to make sure the LED strip wouldn't come loose at some point later. With the LEDs securely installed, I replaced the top board, then conducted a second light test. Satisfied with the results, I replaced the side panel. Do not replace the 2 long screws that held the original marquee from the sides. Instead, use the 2 short screws included in the kit. I made the deck wiring modifications next. After removing the dust cover from the control deck, I located the power terminal on the circuit board. The connection uses small JST plugs and sockets. I used a needle nose pliers to carefully remove the plug from the board. I then replaced the original power connection with the pigtail loop, plugging it into the power socket. To connect the new wiring harness to the circuit board, I first drilled a 3/8" hole through the bottom of the dust cover. I then threaded the female JST plug from the new wiring harness through the hole to connect it to the original power plug I'd removed from the circuit board. I then replaced the dust cover and taped the wiring harness in place using duct tape. I reinstalled the control deck in the cabinet, then connected the 12-volt power cable to the female socket on the new wiring harness. I plugged the 2-way splitter into the male part of the harness, and then plugged one leg of the splitter into the back of the monitor and the other into the socket for the marquee's LEDs. With the power connections complete, I replaced the back panel, put the game back on its base, and I connected the power supply. It was very satisfying to see the new marquee light up as it should when I flipped the power switch. I'm very pleased with how easy this project was. The new marquee adds even more fun to Space Invaders, and it took less than 45 minutes to complete. This is a great first or second arcade modification project for beginners. Basically, if you can drill a single hole and use a screwdriver, you can add an Arcade Game Factory LED marquee to any of your currently dark first-generation Arcade1Up machines. For more easy Arcade1Up modification videos, check out my YouTube channel, Pop Art Studios, and watch for more projects yet to come on this Space Invaders cabinet.